Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. We are just waiting for all of our attendees to join the session. So give us a couple more minutes and then we will get started. Okay, hi everyone. Thank you very much for joining today's webinar from DoubleVerify and Rockerbox. I'm thrilled to be here. It's a very interesting topic for me, at least, and I am joined by none other than Jonathan Kim, who I have known for many, many years. We are former co-workers. He is now a client. He is extremely knowledgeable about all things measurement and has sat through probably more QBRs than he can imagine or remember, so is amply qualified for today's topic. Jonathan, I don't know if you want to come off mute and introduce yourself properly quickly before we get started.
Okay, great.
One
Second.
Oh, Kelly Jane said she can't hear Jonathan. Jonathan, are you able to just try your microphone settings there in the bottom of the screen, see if there's something that needs adjusting? In the meantime, Jonathan, while you're adjusting that and seeing if we can get that working, I'll just kick off the session. But feel free to start talking whenever you think you've got that fixed, and we can introduce you again for those that couldn't hear you the first time. Is that working better? Here we go. Oh, I cannot hear you yet. No, I can't hear you now. That's frustrating. Okay. Maybe Jonathan may have to participate via the chat if we can't get the headphones working, unfortunately. But let's keep trying. And I'll just tee up the pages while Jonathan is getting that all organized. Okay, so while we wait, what is a QBR? Why is it important? Why is it really critical for advertisers, for brands? I think the main thing is that it's just a very, very helpful, dedicated time for you to go really in depth on a specific topic with one of your publisher partners. It's a really unique opportunity for a lot of brands. You don't get to go super, super deep on specific topics all of the time. You know, oftentimes your interactions with your different publishers are going to be a little bit surface level. And so having that dedicated time every quarter where you're able to really spend deep amounts of time diving into the details with your publishers is a really important and unique opportunity. It's also important to just take time to step back from the day-to-day, align on results, contextualize your performance on each of the different platforms, and specifically and especially identifying upcoming opportunities that you might have with those publishers specifically. So that could be all kinds of things depending on which publisher you're talking about. It could be creative opportunities, targeting, buying opportunities, all kinds of things like that. So lots of reasons why it's just a really important strategic touch point that you need to make sure that you're well prepared for and that you take the right approach to be able to maximize the benefit of. So what are we going to go through today? So there's really 4 specific main topics that I want to touch on. One is about strategic alignment, so making sure that you use the QBR to align with your publisher partners on all kinds of topics, data, objectives, what you've got coming up for the next quarter. There can be a lot of reasons why you want to take a step back and just get aligned strategically before you kick off anything else. Obviously, that high level is the most important place to start. Then campaign performance. I think a lot of people's experience would suggest that, for a QBR, this is really the nuts and bolts of it. This is the main event, is aligning around your campaign performance. What happened in the quarter? Was it good? What is it bad? But then thirdly, we also want to make sure that you're putting that into the strategic context. So making sure that you understand what is the environment that all of that campaign performance exists in, and how should you think about it? What is the contextualization, if you like, for all of that performance data? And then, as we talked about, opportunities. What is coming up? How can we look forward and think about the future for this particular publisher? All right, Jonathan, you're back, I see. Can you try and say something, and hopefully we can hear you this time? Oh no, I still cannot hear you. I do not know why. That is very unfortunate. No. Okay, that's a great shame.
Will, did that help?
Yes, now that helps. Now I can hear you. Okay.
Sorry about that. I don't know what's going on, but okay, I said before, it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm the Senior Director of Digital and Acquisition at Lowe'sHotels.com, and as Will mentioned before, I had the pleasure of working alongside him on the agency side, which must have been more than 10 years ago. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great. All right. Well, thank you again for joining us. I'm glad we got the technical hiccups sorted out. This would have been a far less valuable session without your input, so I'm glad we're all squared away. Okay, so this is the agenda. I've gone through the 4 points. This is what we're going to be talking about today. We have one slide for each of these before we wrap up, and Jonathan and I will just be talking through each of these different components. But as I said in the chat already on the right-hand side, if you have any questions while we go, please do put them into the chat there, and Jonathan and I will make sure that we answer them as they come in. We will leave a little bit of time for questions at the end, but I'd rather that this was a much more interactive session. So by all means, please drop your questions in whenever they come to mind. Okay, so strategic alignment. I think actually this is, I guess, a bit of a question for Jonathan, which is, have you ever had this experience? I have had this experience a few times where I go into a QBR and we are sort of very aligned internally between, say, the agency and the advertiser, the brand, about exactly what kind of data we want to see. We know what our objectives are. We know what our KPIs are. We know what we focus on a day-to-day basis. But then when we get into the QBR, the data that we get back from the publisher is not quite aligned, right? We don't seem to be on the same page in terms of what we're trying to achieve versus how the publishers are thinking about success. And there's just a little bit of a disconnect there. I don't know if you've sort of have that experience or still have that experience, but would love to hear.
Absolutely. And I think oftentimes what happens is it's either some miscommunication between the agency and the partner, or some misalignment with expectations. But on our side, what we often see from the performance standpoint is the publisher would often showcase results as if they're the only ones who exist in the channel mix, meaning they essentially would disregard who else may be in the mix, and that often leads to what I like to call internally is the decoupling of publisher level reporting and our business level KPIs and performance. And to kind of dig into that, what that actually means is we'd often see charts always go up, right? And I understand the pressure to not want to show results that look like they're lagging or not doing as well as same time last year or previous month. But when we then look at our internal data, it may actually be suffering. But if someone tells us, oh, look at this amazing results, like we're hitting all-time highs in terms of efficiency and overall production, look how good we are, how do we find more opportunity to spend more money? That's where we start kind of, that's the decoupling that I'm talking about. And I think it's really important that all partners understand that they're not here to solve all problems and put all the pressure on themselves. I think it's better to understand exactly what the role of that partner is, how it complements other channels, other partners, and how it can better align with the brand's goals. So to give you an example, when we run a connected TV campaign, for instance, we don't really look at revenue generated from it. We try to monitor site visits from new users over time. So it could take up to 6 months, regardless of how long the campaign runs. We would continue to monitor and see, what kind of lift we can expect or we can see from those partners. So I think overall, it's better alignment on both sides. I guess it's one is not putting so much pressure on yourselves if you're a publisher, and on the brand side, just better understanding like it's not always about revenue. It's a marathon, not a sprint. So that's an ongoing conversation that we always have.
I think those are all amazing points. I mean, I think that the most recent thing that you said, are your KPIs the right ones? You know, that's really kind of critical to think about, right? Like what you've highlighted just now is that sometimes your KPIs will be brand lift or direct traffic, or it could be, it could be something like just the number of searches that are coming in for your brand, right? All of these things are really, really important. And I think, that can vary by publisher, as you pointed out, but it could also vary within a single publisher, right? I mean, you could have a single publisher who have just multiple different types of ads that they're running, everything from top of funnel awareness all the way through to retargeting. And you could be having completely different KPIs for each of those. It might not necessarily be exactly the same one all the way up and down the funnel, even though the publisher is exactly the same. I think your idea of decoupling is fantastic, and I think the final 2 points or the final 2 notes that we have on this page here about deduplication and incrementality, I think really get a little bit into this idea of decoupling. So I want to, just for the benefit of the audience, I know that you know what I mean by deduplication and incrementality, but I want to make sure that everyone who's joined the webinar really understands. So to break it down, when I think about deduplication, what I think about is, let's say in GA4, we have, or in any multi-touch attribution system, could be Rockerbox, could be GA4, could be anything, you're going to have some conversions which are attributable to publisher A, and some which are attributable to publisher B, and some which overlap. So there might be a lot of conversions where there are touch points from both of these publishers, and those need to be attributed fairly. And I think, Jonathan, what you were getting at is basically that publisher A is kind of taking credit for everything that they've touched, and publisher B is taking credit for everything that they've touched. And that overlap is not being split apart properly, which means that you could, when publisher A could just be expanding into conversions that are already being driven by publisher B. And what that means is that as those touch points increase in volume, be they clicks or impressions, you're not actually getting more conversions. And so being able to pick apart that deduplication is really, really critical. And for that, you really need a sort of a more centralized MTA solution than just looking at individual siloed sets of partner data. There is a sort of solution in market for this, I guess, as far as QBRs are concerned anyway, which is doing like a performance passback type of API where you have your attribution partner pass the results of deduplicated attribution back to each of your publishers. And that could actually become a focus of some of your QBRs if your publishers allow it. So definitely something to consider for any brands out there who are interested. And then incrementality, obviously, this is, I think a critical one that sometimes gets lost in the mix, which is just, is the media actually driving additional conversion activity, or is it just associated with conversion activity? And sometimes that can lead to that same decoupling, right? Where we might be putting more touch points into market, but if they're not really causal, if they're not actually driving consumers to take action, then you may see that line of impressions or that line of kind of associated conversions go up, but you're not seeing that impact on the top line of your business. So yeah, Jonathan, cannot thank you enough for that answer. I think that makes a ton of sense. Okay, let's move on to topic number 2. So campaign performance. I think one of the things that has always been of absolutely critical importance to me when I think about a QBR is to remember that the publisher has access to just a colossal, almost unimaginable amount of data. And while not all of it is going to be super relevant for you, there is going to be a lot that is. And so being able to put the data into context for you as a brand is something that the publisher is almost uniquely positioned to do. So it is certainly possible that your agency has a ton of data and they should be helping you with this as well. But certainly consider when you're talking to a publisher, asking them, how does this performance actually stack up against brands of my size, brands at my stage of growth, other brands in my category, my geography, and so on and so forth. Those are, I think, really critical questions to be asking. Because without that contextualization, it's really hard to know whether your performance is fantastic or your performance is mediocre. It might look great from the inside, but actually there could be other outside parties, competitors of yours who are doing even better. And so I think making sure that you're insisting on great context from your publishers is really, really important as well. Jonathan, I don't know if you have anything to add to that you've experienced.
Not much besides, sometimes I'm also curious about just how the publisher partner is doing overall.
Mm-hmm.
How has overall volume looked? How is it trending month over month, year over year? Sometimes I'm also curious, what are the top kind of entry refer domains and exit, like where are they coming from and where do they often go to? Because that also sometimes gives you an idea of what kind of mindset the user may be in.
Yeah,
I think just sharing the platform's overall traffic, I also find very helpful.
Yeah, great point. Absolutely. Okay. Strategic context. So again, just in this sort of theme of the publisher having the most amount of information and context and data possible, it's always worth just remembering that the media landscape is changing so fast. If I think about the kinds of conversations that I'm having with a lot of my clients about things like YouTube and the way in which user interaction with that channel and the way that people are thinking about YouTube from a user perspective has changed. It's just vastly different to what it was even 2 years ago, let alone say 10 years ago. It's just, it's a completely different channel at this point. So given that context, asking for things about what are the best campaigns that we've run, what are the worst campaigns, why, making sure that you're keeping an eye on the actionability of that as well, right? In hindsight, what should we have done differently? In the future, what should we do differently? And then thinking again about, well, what are the other companies in my peer group or in my category and how have they been doing? What are the campaigns that they have run that really stand out? Is there anything that we can learn from those? Just having all of that context is really, really critical, I think. So just, again, taking that step back, making sure that you are getting the strongest learnings that you can and making sure that they're actionable when you're talking to our publisher partners is really important when it comes to getting that context. Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Jonathan.
One thing I want to also add is I know from my agency experience, we spend a lot of time trying to study the clients and the brands. I think that also applies to publisher partners and just partners in general, because the partners who stand out the most are the ones who really speak the language of the business, the client's business, and demonstrates that they have looked into the latest and what's going on in terms of the vertical and et cetera, and proactively share recommendations. So when we talk about campaign results, even if it's not doing as well as expected, if there's a lot of context behind it and they're sharing, here's why we think things aren't really working, it could be the audience, and on our side, we start seeing a different type of audience tick up. Whereas the audience that we want to target, we're not really seeing that much demand for some reason. And then having those kind of conversations and steering that towards recommendations, saying, here are some ideas that I think would better align with your business needs right now. It could relate to the economic climate. It could relate to anything else. But when partners proactively do the research, connect the dots, connect it to performance, and tell more of a story instead of just putting numbers on the screen, I think that's when we kind of build more trust overall.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's always really interesting to me when brands come and talk to us and say, well, that campaign was a waste, or that campaign was bad, or that test was bad, or something like that. In my mind, it's always important to take that step back and kind of reframe how you think about these things. So to your point, if you didn't see the performance that you were hoping for or that you were expecting, there's still a great opportunity to learn. But if you go in with the mindset of, well, that budget was just a write-off, so let's just pretend like it never happened and kind of brush it under the rug, then you're not really going to get the most out of it, right? There's always some kind of lesson that you can salvage and something that you can think about for next year or next quarter or what have you.
Yeah, and one anecdote to share here is I've actually been in a meeting where the partner kept using kind of like big box retail as an example. And then it took a while until the middle of the meeting that I realized, oh, they think they're talking to Lowe's Home Improvement and not Lowe's Hotels. That's why we kept seeing like LOWES, not LOEWS. But again, that just shows they really didn't do much homework and they just assumed, oh, Lowe's, it must be that Lowe's.
Yeah, so that certainly would count among the worst experiences I'd have ever had in the QBR if that ever happened to me. But I think I think you're right. I think there are certainly, that one's particularly obvious that they haven't done their homework. But even beyond that, I think there are certain things which are just really interesting signs that a publisher is really working hard to understand your business context. Even just things as simple as the language that they're using. Some brands talk about cost per sale, some talk about customer acquisition cost, some will talk about CPA. And so just kind of aligning the language, even just those individual words to the brand that you're talking to can make all the difference. And if someone is not really speaking about results in the way that you like to speak about results, that could be a sign that they haven't really done that homework that Jonathan, you mentioned was so critical. So something certainly to look out for. Even if they do know that you're in the right category or they have got the industry vertical correct, then there might be other things that they're not quite paying attention to. I'll call back to something that you said earlier, actually, Jonathan, which is that, it sounds like a lot of this discussion is sort of putting a lot of pressure on the publisher to do all of this work and do all of this research. But I think there's a lot that really should be the focus of the brand as well. If you haven't told if you as a brand haven't told a publisher, this is how we talk about our results, or if you haven't shared, these are the 5 brands that we think of as our direct competitors, then it's very hard to say, well, that's all on the publisher's fault. Clearly there was a bit of work that could have been done to guide them. I'm sure in your instance, you told them that you were a hotels brand, or that, they should have known that you were hospitality. But nevertheless, I think there are things that brands can do to make these processes a lot smoother.
Absolutely. It's a two-way lane. And I think the more you share, the more you get out of these meetings, not just QBRs, but just the relationship in general. So I think being as open as possible and sharing as much as you can within your guardrails, I think that's absolutely true.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's move on to our fourth topic. So opportunities. We talked a little bit on the last page about how quickly the media landscape is changing. Publishers are evolving quickly as well. And so there are always opportunities to learn about new things that are coming out. It could be creative opportunities, there could be targeting or buying opportunities, completely new media products that a publisher is launching. All of these things are really important. And oftentimes there's quite a lot of value in being among the first, if you're able to be among the first into a new strategy or a new product. So QBR is the obvious place to get ahead of that, to learn what's happening, to learn what's coming, and to try and get your foot in the door to be part of those opportunities. Now, obviously, you don't want all of your QBRs just to be pure sales meetings, just to be an opportunity for a publisher to pitch you on new ideas. But I think we'd be remiss to ignore the fact that all publishers are bringing in a lot of AI opportunities these days. And I think we should expect that to continue. So if your QBRs don't contain a discussion of AI in lots of different facets, then obviously that's a gap that you'll want to fill. And the quicker that you can react and take advantage of a lot of the opportunities that are presented to you, the better in general, all other things being equal. So definitely a big focus of every successful QBR that I've ever been a part of. But Jonathan, I'm sure you have a perspective on this as well.
Yeah, thanks, Will. And we spent a lot of time, I guess to correct myself, we've spent a lot of time talking about GEO, generative engine optimizations, and just how to make sure our website can be the authority when someone's searching for information. But when it comes to QBRs and just the publisher and brand relationship, I still haven't seen it yet. But I'd love to see more stats on how much traffic to the publisher site is coming from AI crawlers, and how much the site is being cited in AI results. I think that's also very critical, because if we start seeing a positive trend there, then that also opens up different opportunities where it could be more of a content discussion. Like, how do we curate content so that it lives on that publisher page? And when it comes to advertising, I think it's still a big question mark in terms of the impact. I have my personal thoughts, but I'll save that for another time.
Yep.
But I think just getting in front of it and talking about it is important.
Yes.
I know everyone's probably tired of hearing and reading about AI everywhere. But when it comes to a practical sense, like how do we actually utilize this? I still haven't seen that much data from the ad community.
Yeah.
That I'm still digging into, but yeah, absolutely, it's hard to ignore.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think in my experience so far, when people discover that they're getting a lot of AI traffic, the reaction tends to be sort of pleasant surprise, as opposed to here is how we action on this, here is how we drive this number up. It's more a sort of almost like a novelty at this point. But I love your point about this being as much a factor for publishers as it is for brands, that they need to understand where they're getting their traffic from, and it's not taking over search indexing as the most important way for people to discover content, but it's certainly becoming increasingly critical. So definitely a big topic for the future, I think. Okay, great. So let's wrap up with a couple of slides around best practices. So obviously, before the meeting, there is a ton of work to do to make your QBR a success. It's unrealistic to think that you could walk into the meeting and just direct a great meeting from there. So first of all, align internally, meet as a brand, talk about what you want to get out of the meeting, Undoubtedly, you will have different teams in the meeting with different objectives, looking for different things, but making sure that you are all in alignment so you can get the most out of your hour or 90 minutes as you possibly can. Get your questions shared in advance, request the data early if possible, and in reverse, share data with the publishers if you want them to actually analyze what you're seeing and compare it to what they're seeing. And if possible, get the materials themselves in advance. The longer that you have to react and prepare questions, the more use you're going to get out of that limited time that you have in person or on a video call with the publisher there. And then during the meeting, stay focused on actions. We talked about this a few pages ago, but making sure that you really understand what should I be doing after this meeting when I go back to my day-to-day and I have another quarter before the next one of these. What are the things that I should focus on? If you're requesting things from the publisher, make sure that that's super clear. Or if you're going to share materials with them later for them to look at and respond to, make sure that that's super, super clear. And then the last one, I can't stress this one enough, make sure that you stay on track. These meetings are time-bound, they're short. It can be easy to get bogged down into a single topic, wondering why different numbers don't align with what you thought you were going to be seeing. Things like that can derail a meeting very, very quickly. And so just making sure that you push through those blocks and stay focused on what you're trying to get out of the meeting, I think is really, really critical. Okay, and then final thoughts from me, and then Jonathan, I'll hand it back to you in case there's anything that you want to add to wrap up. But like I said at the beginning, QBRs are just unique opportunities to get really deep with a particular publisher, learn about new opportunities, talk about your performance, get data that is very, very hard to access anywhere else or any other time. If they're not planned properly, if they're run poorly, they can turn into very, very deep sales calls with just a big focus on budgets and spending more. But if they're run really well, I think they can be among the most valuable, insightful, and actionable meetings that you can possibly have. And I've certainly seen people walk out of a really great QBR with an absolutely refreshed understanding of what a publisher is capable of, what they can do for your brand, and just sort of brimming with ideas about where to take it next. So it is possible to have a fantastic QBR that really transforms the way that you think about your media mix. And yeah, if you are able to get that meeting, run it well or have it run well, and if it's for one of your biggest publisher partners, then it can be transformative. You think about the value that your biggest partners bring to you. If you can increase that value even just by 10 or 20%, that can add a tremendous amount to your bottom line. So certainly something that deserves focus and making sure you get it right.
Agreed with all the above, Will, and I'm surprised we haven't talked about viewability and brand safety on a DV call yet, but I think also understanding the brand's tech stack that they've invested in with the agency is also critical, and making sure that you're fully utilizing everything that they have to offer. Will, I know we've gone down the rabbit hole of analyzing impression ID level performance back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And what I would say is it's refreshing when you meet partners who from the get-go just say, here's the results of all these impressions, X% were served to bots inadvertently because here's why. And this percent went to real humans, and within real humans, here was a viewability, brand safety looked really good. And audience-wise, here's how much we could have, what the match rate was, or who we were able to reach under the agreements. Mm-hmm. And when you have all that laid out on the table, I think the conversation starts flowing naturally, as in instead of just looking at numbers and snapshots, you start having more of a conversation than just getting too, I would say, fixated on results and numbers.
Yeah,
that's what I really personally prefer. I don't speak for our brands, but that's when I know our partner is fully transparent in how they operate.
Yeah,
and they're taking advantage of all the tools that the brand has. I think that just that's a good start to a healthy QBR and many QBRs to come.
Yeah, great point. Great point. And yes, thank you for calling out brand suitability, fraud. Obviously big focuses for DoubleVerify, and if you're having a meeting with a partner that you think should have partnership with DoubleVerify and they don't, then obviously ask them about it. But yeah, we would like everyone to be focused on that. It should be a kind of table stakes offering, I think, for a lot of media publishers at this point, for sure.
Sorry, one last thought is, I know we probably have a crowd from different places of the world, the country, and different verticals, but a huge thanks to everyone who's in this together, because it's a rapidly changing landscape. That's one, I'd say, common denominator from 20 years ago and today is just things change very quickly, but it takes a lot to keep up with everything, organize results, help brands and agency partners, and keep moving things forward. So huge kudos to everyone involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely second that. Thank you, Jonathan. That's all the content that we have. We'll wait a minute or two for anyone who has a question just to drop it in the chat. But if we don't have any questions, then we will wrap up quickly and call it a day. So with that, I'm going to insist on a few seconds of awkward silence while we just wait for any questions to come in. Okay, I don't see any questions coming. I'm going to assume that means that Jonathan's insights were so superb that we covered everything that we possibly could have. I'd like to thank everyone for joining, and especially like to thank Jonathan for spending some of his afternoon with us. Really enjoyed this session, and yeah, your thoughts were fantastic. So really appreciate you taking the time to join us.
Let's grab coffee or beer soon, Will. Thanks for having me. And if you're shy and you want to ask questions on the side, please reach out to me via LinkedIn or email. Will has my contact.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't hesitate to ask if you have a specific question for Jonathan. All right. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.